What defines true strength? Is it living in comfort, shielded from all harm? Or is it the ability to face storms head-on, emerging stronger every time? Have you ever wondered why some people succeed, despite facing endless struggles, while others fail, even when given every advantage? In a small, peaceful village, there was a wise old teacher, known for his profound life lessons. One day, a curious young boy approached him with a question. "Teacher, why do some people fail while others succeed? I want to know how I can become successful in my life." The teacher smiled warmly and replied, "That's a profound question, my boy. But instead of giving you an answer right away, let me share a story with you, one about two eagles. This story holds a lesson in freedom, strength, and survival." And so, the teacher began his story, one that would leave a lasting impact. There were two eagles living two completely different lives. The first eagle lived in a sanctuary. It was protected, cared for, and never had to fend for itself. Every day, fresh food and clean water were brought to it, effortlessly. It never felt hunger, never faced predators, and never struggled for survival. Its feathers shone under the sunlight, sleek and pristine, a reflection of its comfortable life. Its body was well fed, its surroundings peaceful. But for all its apparent strength, the eagle had never truly used its wings. It had never flown farther than a few feet. It had never braved the open sky, never felt the wind rushing beneath its wings. The second eagle, however, lived in the wild, a life of constant struggle. Every day it hunted for food, sometimes going hungry for days when its attempts failed. It faced predators lurking in the shadows. It braved the elements. It fought for survival. Its feathers were rough. Its body bore scars from battles. And its talons? They carried the marks of countless struggles. But within those scars lay a strength that could not be seen. Every flap of its wings carried the power of resilience. Its eyes, sharp and focused, reflected the fierce determination of a creature that had endured and adapted to the harsh realities of life. The teacher paused, letting the contrast sink in, then turned to the boy. "The eagle in the sanctuary has everything it needs to live comfortably," the teacher said. "Food, water, shelter, it's all handed to it. But there's one thing it doesn't have. Do you know what that is?" The boy furrowed his brows, thinking hard. Finally, he shook his head. "What?" "Strength," the teacher replied, his voice steady, "the kind of strength that comes from facing challenges. Its wings have never known the strain of the wind. Its heart has never raced with the thrill of survival. It has everything, except the one thing it needs most." "And what about the wild eagle?" the boy asked, leaning forward with curiosity. The teacher's face softened as he spoke. "The wild eagle has scars, yes. Its feathers aren't perfect, and it doesn't always win. But every time it fights, every time it struggles, it grows stronger. It learns. It adapts. And in that struggle, it finds its freedom." The boy's expression turned thoughtful, and he glanced down for a moment, considering the teacher's words. "So, which eagle is stronger?" the teacher asked, his eyes intent on the boy. The boy lifted his head and answered without hesitation. "The one in the sanctuary. It looks bigger and healthier." The teacher smiled knowingly and replied, "Let's see." He paused, then added a question of his own. "If you were an eagle, which life would you choose?" One day, a powerful storm swept across the land. Dark clouds swallowed the blue sky, plunging the world into shadow. The wind howled like a raging beast, bending trees until they cracked. Thunder roared with deafening intensity, and lightning slashed the heavens in jagged flashes. Rain fell in relentless torrents, turning the calm village into chaos. Birds scattered in panic, their cries lost in the storm's fury. In the sanctuary, the eagle sat in its cage, sheltered as always. It had never known a storm like this. The crashing thunder and sharp flashes of lightning made its feathers bristle. The wind slammed into the cage, rattling the bars violently. It crouched low, talons gripping the perch as the structure shook. And then, with one fierce gust, the storm ripped through the cage, tearing away a section of the door. For the first time, the eagle stood at the edge of freedom. The open sky stretched out before it, vast and wild. But it wasn't inviting. It was terrifying. The wind tugged at its feathers, a harsh reminder of the unknown. The cage had always been its world, a place of comfort and safety. But the storm had stripped away its security. There was no choice now. It had to leave. With trembling wings, the eagle leapt from the cage into the storm. It was instantly overwhelmed. The winds were merciless, battering its untrained wings. It flapped desperately, struggling to stay aloft, but every gust knocked it off course. The rain stung its eyes, blurring its vision. Panic filled its mind as it spiraled downward. It wasn't ready for this. The storm was too strong, and its wings were too weak. Meanwhile, across the sky, the wild eagle faced the same storm. But this eagle wasn't afraid. It had battled storms like this before. felt the raw power of the wind, endured the sting of rain, and survived the sky's fury. Its wings, scarred but strong, spread wide as it soared straight into the heart of the storm. For the wild eagle, the wind wasn't an enemy. It was an ally. Every gust became a chance to rise higher, to climb beyond the chaos. It tilted its body, adjusting to the flow, and let the storm's energy lift it. Each beat of its wings was purposeful, honed by years of survival. With every stroke, it rose higher, leaving the raging storm below. Back in the sanctuary's ruins, the first eagle floundered. Its frantic flapping showed no control. It didn't know how to work with the wind, or use its power to rise. Exhaustion quickly set in, and the storm showed no mercy. With a final brutal gust, the eagle was thrown to the ground, its strength gone, and its spirit broken. As the storm subsided, the sky slowly cleared. Dark clouds gave way to patches of soft blue, and sunlight pierced through, illuminating the aftermath. Broken branches littered the ground, and puddles reflected the golden light of a new day. High above, the wild eagle soared. Its wings stretched wide, carrying it effortlessly through the clear blue sky. It had faced the storm, and emerged stronger, unbroken and free. The boy sat in stunned silence, struggling to comprehend what he had just heard. After a moment, he shook his head in disbelief. "I thought the eagle in the sanctuary would be stronger," he said. "It was bigger, healthier. It had everything it needed. How could it fail?" The teacher's eyes sparkled with wisdom. "Strength isn't built in comfort," he replied. "It's built in struggle." The sanctuary eagle had everything, except the chance to grow. It had never faced hardship, never tested its wings, and when the storm came, it was too late for it to learn. He gestured toward the sky, where the wild eagle soared into the distance. The wild eagle, on the other hand, grew stronger every time it faced a storm. Every challenge taught it how to survive, how to fly higher, and how to turn adversity into strength. That's why it soared, while the other fell. The boy looked up, following the wild eagle's path. He didn't speak, but his eyes lingered on the horizon, where the eagle had disappeared, as if searching for something far beyond the clouds. The teacher's gaze shifted back to the boy, who sat quietly, trying to piece everything together. His face reflected a mixture of confusion and curiosity as he replayed the story in his mind. "The eagle in the wild faced storms and hunger every day," the teacher began, his tone steady yet warm. "It struggled, fought, and endured. But those challenges didn't break it. They made it stronger. Its wings became powerful because they had to bear the weight of the wind. Its instincts sharpened because they were tested by predators. And its spirit grew unshakable because it had to persevere through every hardship. Without those struggles, the wild eagle would never have learned to soar." The boy's eyes widened slightly, the realization starting to dawn on him. "So, the struggles were actually good for it?" he asked, almost incredulously. "Exactly," the teacher replied with a nod. "Challenges are not obstacles, they are opportunities to grow. Every storm the wild eagle faced gave it the strength to fly higher. And that's a lesson for all of us. When life gets hard, don't see it as a wall blocking your path. See it as a stepping stone to something greater." The boy furrowed his brows, deep in thought. "But what about when the wild eagle failed? Did it ever mess up?" he asked hesitantly. The teacher's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Oh, many times. The wild eagle didn't always succeed. There were days when it missed its prey and went hungry. Days when it misjudged the wind and struggled to stay aloft. Every failure tested its limits. But instead of giving up, it learned. It learned how to fly better, how to hunt smarter, and how to adapt." He paused, letting his words settle in the boy's mind. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the journey. Each setback is a lesson in disguise, if you're willing to see it that way. The eagle in the wild didn't succeed because it never failed. It succeeded because it refused to stop trying, even when it did. The boy nodded slowly, his mind unlocking door after door. "So, failing doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're learning?" he asked, his voice tinged with awe. "Exactly," the teacher said, his voice growing firmer yet kind. "Failure is a teacher, but only if you're willing to learn from it." He leaned slightly forward, his gaze steady. "It's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you rise after falling." The boy sat back, the weight of the words settling on him. But why couldn't the sanctuary eagle succeed? It had everything. Why didn't it learn? The teacher's expression grew more serious, his tone deepening. The sanctuary eagle had everything it needed, except freedom. It never had to fight for survival, never had to overcome hunger or danger, and because of that, it never grew strong enough to handle the outside world. It lived a comfortable life, but comfort can be a trap. It can make you weak without you even realizing it. He paused for a moment, then continued, his voice softer. Freedom isn't free. To enjoy it, you must be strong enough to survive outside your comfort zone. The wild eagle earned its freedom by facing hardship and growing stronger. The sanctuary eagle never stepped beyond its safe, familiar cage. And when the storm came, it was too late for it to learn. The boy looked down, his expression thoughtful and serious. So, comfort can be like a cage? He asked quietly. Yes, the teacher replied. Comfort feels good in the moment, but if you never step outside of it, you'll never know what you're truly capable of. Growth begins when you face challenges, when you step into the unknown, and when you risk failure. That's where real strength is born. The boy looked up at the teacher, his eyes filled with a new understanding. What about me? He asked quietly. Am I ready to face my storms and grow stronger? The teacher's gaze softened as he placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. That's a question only you can answer, my boy. But remember this. Every challenge is a chance to rise. Every failure is a lesson in disguise. And every step out of your comfort zone brings you closer to the person you're meant to become. For a moment, the boy sat in silence, staring into the horizon where the storm had passed. His gaze shifted upward, following the path of the wild eagle soaring high above the clouds. Determination flickered in his eyes. The fear that once held him back began to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. The teacher stood beside him, watching silently. After a moment, the boy turned and asked softly, "Did you face storms in your life too?" The teacher chuckled gently, his eyes reflecting a mixture of wisdom and nostalgia. "Many storms, my boy, some bigger than others, but each one taught me how to fly a little higher. And so will yours." The boy smiled faintly, a spark of confidence lighting his face. He glanced back at the sky, the wild eagle now a distant speck in the vast blue. Somewhere deep within, a decision began to take shape, a readiness to step out of his own cage and face the unknown. The boy sat back, the weight of the teacher's words settling heavily on him. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. Slowly he looked up and asked, but why couldn't the sanctuary eagle succeed? It had everything. Why didn't it learn? The teacher's expression grew more serious, his voice deep and steady. The sanctuary eagle had everything it needed, except freedom. It never had to fight for survival, never had to overcome hunger or danger. And because of that, it never grew strong enough to handle the outside world. It lived a life of comfort, but comfort can be a trap. It can make you weak, without you even realizing it. He paused briefly, letting the boy absorb the words. "Freedom isn't free," he continued, his tone softer now. "To enjoy it, you must be strong enough to survive outside your comfort zone. The wild eagle earned its freedom by facing hardship and growing stronger. The sanctuary eagle never stepped beyond its safe, familiar cage, and when the storm came, it was too late for it to learn." The boy looked down, deep in thought. After a moment, he asked quietly, "So, comfort can be like a cage?" "Yes," the teacher replied, his eyes filled with understanding. "Comfort feels good in the moment, but if you never step outside of it, you'll never know what you're truly capable of. Growth begins when you face challenges, when you step into the unknown, and when you risk failure. That's where real strength is born." The boy's gaze lifted again, this time meeting the teacher's with quiet determination. "What about me?" he asked softly. "Am I ready to face my storms and grow stronger?" The teacher smiled, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's a question only you can answer, my boy. But remember this, every challenge is a chance to rise, every failure is a lesson in disguise, and every step out of your comfort zone brings you closer to the person you're meant to become." For a long moment, the boy stared into the horizon where the storm had passed. His eyes followed the wild eagle, now soaring high above the clouds. Determination flickered within him, the fear that had once held him back replaced by a quiet resolve. He took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something greater. The teacher stood beside him, silent and steady. Finally, the boy turned, his voice low but firm. "Did you face storms in your life too?" The teacher chuckled softly, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Many storms, my boy, some bigger than others, but each one taught me how to fly a little higher. And so will yours." The boy smiled faintly, his face lit by a newfound confidence. He glanced once more at the eagle, now a distant speck in the vast blue sky. Somewhere deep within, a decision began to take root, a readiness to step out of his own cage and embrace the unknown. The teacher's words echoed in his mind as they stood together beneath the endless sky. every storm you face is a chance to rise. The question is, will you take it?